started. We have an hour in this session. This is our last, and just a little bit of table setting as we get started here. This is our last session in a smaller environment. So our goal is to address the questions that were framed for the panel and make this as interactive as possible. So we're going to go through the panel questions that we were asked, which is how do we take fragmented demand and turn this into factory utilization, and address that from a couple of different perspectives with fully integrated versus not so integrated, and how do we define success in these different models for ourselves. And ultimately, we really want to be able to make this interactive with you guys. So we would love throughout this session, as you have questions, as you have thoughts, please raise your hand. My job as a moderator is going to be to hold the answers and get more feedback and get more engagement from you all. And so that's what I'm hoping for. Can you guys sign up for that with me? Awesome. There we go.
That's the kind of spirit. Somebody came back from lunch with coffee in them.
I know. It's not coffee, it's coffee, not coffee cake at this point. So as a first step, though, just to get a sense of who's in the room, how many of you represent somebody that is a buyer or owner or developer of real estate and housing and properties? Any buyers, owners, developers? Okay, a handful. How many are on the general contractor side of things? Okay, a few GCs. And then how many of you are providing a service or a technology or a component as a manufacturer along the way? Okay, and how many of you do all of that and you just didn't want to raise your hand for one of those buckets? Okay, good. So we've got a nice mix in the room. That's good to know. I'm going to let you guys introduce yourselves because you know yourselves best. But let's start with that. Just a simple 1 minute introduction for who are you, where do you come from, and what do you do?
Excellent. Hello, everyone. I'm Vikas NT, co-founder and CEO of Reframe Systems. We're developing robotic microfactories to produce infill housing. We've been in business for almost 4 years now. We have 10 units in the ground, 100 units in development, and happy to talk more about all the trade-offs we're making.
Ken Similar, I'm CEO, president of Impressive Modular. We are a nationwide builder of using modular construction. We work in primarily residential. I also do a number of other things. Have a media group. We actually publish Offsite Builder magazine for the industry, and we franchise our company with the brand recognition we have. So we have currently 17 franchises nationwide and growing.
Michael Matthews, CEO and founder of Assemblage Works. We're one of the very first architectural firms in the United States that does nothing but prefabricated systems. We operate all over the world. We're based in Portland, Oregon, and Irvine, California. I hate to admit I'm both a reformed developer and a reformed construction executive, or possibly I've just become schizophrenic and decided to go back and be an architect again.
There you go. I love it. And so the first question I want to start with for the group is this. We've heard a lot throughout the last day and a half about integration and kind of where points of different integration happen and structuring that relationship across the supply chain. Just in the intros, I know that you each take a very different perspective on that. Vikas, can you tell us how do you think about being vertically integrated versus playing a role for the ecosystem and how you chose your path?
Yeah, so we see this both as a change management and a utilization problem. And so for the near term, the goal was we need time to continue building and maturing a technology where we can truly get to mass customization at scale. Once we get to that end state goal, then our factory should be able to build any home for any community, any lot. At that point, it doesn't matter. It's a technology play, not a business model play. But to earn the right to do that, we've had to sort of leap in and say, let's sort of wrap around, reduce the amount of change management as we sort of think through who our counterparts are. And we've had to sort of fully integrate to become a full stack design build GC partner for developers, where the means and methods are our own, but what we're delivering are high quality homes to our customers. And in selective cases, we come in as a co-GP or a development partner as needed. But that to us is a near-term play so we can continue wrapping our technology development effort. But the end state goal being the technology itself can become available where you can sort of drive utilization with the tech to get to mass customization, moving away from the need for mass production as underlying system that folks, right? You'll constantly hear me talk about standardize the inputs. Let's figure out how to actually get to the outputs the market needs and have technology figure out the rest. And in the meantime, till we figure that out, we're sort of wrapped around the business model around that question to get the utilization right.
And I had this image of a Trojan horse appear as you were giving that giving that description. Is that how it feels with the technology kind of being the Trojan horse in these wraparound services? If you can do anything once you're inside the walls?
In a way, because there have been enough false promises, right? So I think, because you sort of think about it, right? Like it's very hard to drive technology change in the construction industry where everything is project driven and the expectations become really high. And so we said, let's not worry about the technology promise. Let's just get to the outcome of, like, we're not here to change the industry. We're just here to build more homes. And we'll just keep building more homes. And I think as we keep demonstrating how much faster we can get and how much more efficient we can get with it, then we'll just attract people to come to building the better way. And so this has been in a way where we don't have to market the tech. We just go about our business of trying to build homes and then see how we can get there one home at a time.
I love it. I love it.
And like Ryan said, I think each of us have a different view, but I think a lot of that's based on the view of what you see is from where you sit. And, like Michael sits on the West Coast, we sit on the East Coast, and most of the factories on the East Coast are small, individually owned, a lot of they had to do custom building because that's what the market was driven to. And so, on the East Coast, what I would almost take it's the exact opposite of the premise of the question here. It's more a concentrated demand, but a fragmented supply base. And so that's where we've kind of found our space at as Impressa is if, one of the things in this conference so far is that I see two different sides. There's the build-to-rent guy building 300 single-family homes or 200 duplexes, and then there's the person building the 100-unit apartment building. And it seems like we've talked a lot about the 100-unit apartment building, but not so much about the 100 duplex subdivision. And I think that's where we tend to play at because on the East Coast, there's only two factories I know of that I can go and get a project that's 50,000 square feet or more built. It just doesn't happen on the East Coast. You have a number of those factories on the West Coast that you can do that. And so the East Coast we haven't thrived, I would say, in large multifamily with modular yet, simply because the way the factories are configured, they can't do it. But they can address the build to rent in a way where we can actually collect 10 factories together to meet the demand for that single family or small multifamily. So just a different view from where we sit.
See, we're taking a much different tact in the idea that for the longest time, design professionals were kind of like the little kids at the Thanksgiving table where they're off on the small table, the rest of the adults sat at the big table. And so that we had to figure out as a value proposition how design professionals can actually drive and move because going to a client, going to a developer and saying, hey, this is cool, this is fast, this works, they're not going to listen to us. The reality is that if you look at the paradigm, who are you going to listen to? You're going to look at the architect whose maybe fee basis is anywhere between $300,000 and $750,000 for a project, or you're going to listen to GC who's basically holding, say, $100 million in regards to all capital in terms of their delivery methodology. So two things we look at is that we decided as I created Assemblage Works is that we were going to be both an aggregator and also a connector. And because of the development background I have, a great deal of it is moving the developers toward the systems and getting them to understand and believe that this can be done. And it's by showing the fact that you have relationships with general contractors, relationships with MEP engineering, structural engineering that believe in this paradigm. So everything that we try to do is in some ways, and that's also why we do owner representation, is that we try to find a way to connect all of the true believers into one paradigm to be able to move this along. Because what we found is if you do not have a team that is not aggregated and belief-oriented in regards to this delivery methodology, you will never succeed.
Yeah. And what does success look like for you in that view? What are you aiming for as
speed of delivery? I mean, because the reality is nothing else counts. The idea is that And when I speed, it's predictability of cost, predictability of time, and speed is of the essence. It's that if we can help our client go from, we stated the fact that we're 22 months on the delivery process and we can do 20, we've won. And as long as we stay within the paradigms of the project itself, in terms of cost and predictability.
I'm seeing both of you nod along a little bit. What more would you like to add to those metrics that Michael offered?
No, I mean, I think speed is like he said, I'll just reiterate, speed is everything. And I think, what I see is new to modular developers aren't believers yet.
Yeah.
And even though you can tell it to them, you can show it to them, they haven't experienced it. And so to get them to believe that I can take a 15-month project and do it in 10, and then understand the economics, because I think, they're risk averse, like we all know, and there's no risk in doing it the same way they've always done it. Even if it's hard, they want to continue to do it. And even though I tell them that 15-month project that you swear will be done in 15 months on your P&L is actually going to take 18, because we all know it's never going to be done in 15, and we all know it's going to be 10% more because of change orders. We don't account for it. We take the most optimistic view in the P&L, and then they never account for modular because they still don't believe. And so, I hear this term, a modular premium, thrown around. And it's like when the developer's going down through the P&L, they kind of want to stop. They don't want to go to the bottom line at first. They want to get to where they think they're at equilibrium between, okay, if I was framing this on site, getting it to drywall, and I'm getting it from the modular manufacturer at drywall, modular's $3 a square foot more. Conversation ends. No, run it all the way through to the P&L, and let's be honest with yourself.
Yeah.
We're going to be done 5 months sooner. That's 5 months less carry, 5 months more closer to rent stabilization. And by the way, add those 3 months to the site that was going to take 3 months anyway. And now let's see where the equation, what the pro forma looks like. And we just got to get developers believing to get to that point.
Yeah, I think the only thing I'd add to that is, predictability above all else is what's going to be the winning strategy, and faster is cheaper. It's always funny when we're, no offense to the developers here, it's usually, hi, how are you? What's your dollar per square foot? As the quick question. And it's almost an active thing. Okay, do you want what's believable? Right? So I think the conversation needs to shift more from what's the guaranteed outcome we can get to, predictably, versus what's your starting cost standpoint.
Which is the funny thing, because if you look at the performance, it's not the first tab, it's not the second tab, it's probably the 8th tab that has the variability risk analysis where they go up and down 5% in time, 5% in cost, up and down, and they know they're going to basically they're going to do okay.
Yeah.
But the reality is that the item that they know that is the most risk to them, because we live in a paradigm that we've been in the last 50 years, is time of construction and the fact that my project's going to go over budget.
And I'll also be curious for, I think, both of your takes on this. And actually, Ryan, you don't get to answer questions here. Right?
No.
So we've broadly spoken about, hey, there's a 300-unit built-to-rent market or a 300-unit, monolithic multifamily market. We're starting to see the in-between starting to blossom more, right? If you start to think about all the upzoning that's taking place, the demographic shift, the boomers wanting to downsize and sort of move to existing communities, Zoomers wanting to get more physical connectivity, we're starting to find that there's growing demand to stay within existing neighborhoods. Zoning is now allowing you to start build more density in existing neighborhoods, right? Like California allows you to build 10 townhomes on a single family lot. Where we are in Massachusetts, we're starting to see a lot more demand for, hey, let's get to triple deckers or get to multiple units in a single family lot. And here we find a situation where the market's actually extremely inefficient and extremely mispriced. The two markets we spoke about for high volume are very efficient, right? So you're starting to talk about $3 a square foot difference. But the market we're at, we're talking about $100 a square foot difference, where it's just a drastically different opportunity for industrialized construction. I'd be really curious on how you guys are starting to think about, or you're seeing any shift in your demographic profile and how you would think about predictability in that context.
God, that's a great question. I think you're absolutely right. Up and down the entire West Coast, we have had so much upzoning and the capability that what normally took 3.5 years to entitle is now, in the city of Los Angeles, other than the fact that ULA and some of the other things, we have no tower cranes in the city of Los Angeles right now. But the reality is that through all the changes in state law in California, what used to take 3.5 years, I can get done in less than 8 now, in terms of entitlements. Yeah. So we have no more resistance in the nature of, and not only that, but we've been upzoned. We've added at least 3 stories. So 9% of zoning within, at least in the Southern California area and even the San Francisco Bay Area, is all based on a 7-story paradigm. That's why 502 became so successful, because it was the easiest and closest and most non-resistive way to get density. Well, with the state laws kicking, what really works now is an 8-story paradigm. And, but you're at a place where, how do you get there? And the only way to really get there is the utilization of some type of pre-manufactured system, because there is no, in the building code, you're crossing over 2 different realms. One is type 3 versus one is either type 4C on the mass timber side, or type 2 or type 1 to make it all work. But yet every developer, you're absolutely right, is seeing the fact that if you're using a 5.5 cap, every unit I put on top of that building that's beyond the yield that I usually had is close anywhere between $550,000 and $750,000 of value every time I drop a new unit on. So if I can add an extra floor of 20 per floor, it's a significant add in regards to the nature of value on a project. So developers are starting to understand that we need housing. I think Southern California, we have to build someplace in the range of 136,000 units per year in LA County to even stay up with population growth. City of Los Angeles they actually built the lowest number of units in their history, at least in terms of modern history. I think we built close to 6,000 units of housing last year. And so, we're at a place where we have all the tools to be able to do it. And we are seeing that, clustered housing, small scale townhouse, small lot subdivisions are all basically new sort of playgrounds that we can certainly utilize different means of modern methods of construction to actually execute.
And I read the stat on the way here that DFW built more homes than all of California last year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And just to, data, my 2 cents is, we're seeing a lot of interest from developers in the missing middle type product. And so we're getting ready to partner with a pretty significant architect that focuses on missing middle to really create that missing middle modular collection, so that we have a product, because we're seeing up and down the East Coast, they're going into communities and they're doing studies, finding that there's this big gap and the opportunity of how to fill it. They don't have a way to fill it. And so we're hoping to come in with a modular solution after they identify the problem with the city and deliver the answer.
Even Habitat for Humanity is now looking at modular as a delivery methodology. We're actually doing a project right now where they actually came and said, look, we love the volunteer interface to that, but we can't deliver housing. And we can't make enough money through the sales of these proceeds to replenish our pool to be able to create more housing beyond it. So we're actually working with them right now, and it's a missing middle townhouse, 2-story type situation that is, so all these organizations that supply housing are all looking for, I don't have any predictability. I have no basis of being able to understand how I can deliver housing quick enough. What are the methodologies we can? And that's where I was leading, is that we're kind of at a place where we, as the industry, need to understand is that we cannot stay in all of our silos as we used to be. We cannot be untethered. I know for ourselves, Assemblage Works, that we are actively seeking general contractors as strategic partners throughout the United States, because it's the only way to walk into a developer and say, we, as a tethered team with an integrated MEP engineering group behind us, can deliver this methodology in a proper method. But it's all got to be done under a progressive, everything we do now is designed to go under a progressive design build contract, and to ensure the fact that we are very clear to the owners that this is the only methodology that we will work at to be successful for you.
So in that way, you're assembling an integrated team and then going forward, where you fill out your team and then go to those buyers.
Yeah, it's kind of weird that that's our kind of our name of our company is, it's really, we look at it as the assemblage of talent and the assemblage of thought is the only way to execute this type of methodology.
Yeah. And what's the number one question that you get back from the buyers, or in that world? If you have a team that you think is ready to be successful, ready to go forward, what is the breaking point in that conversation that prevents them from buying in the industrialized way? Or fulfilling your volume?
It's
or
interesting.
demand?
Usually the first thing would be is, aren't I going to be able to get a competitive bid both on my soft cost side and my GC side in terms of GCs and fees? And, and it's a proverbial, you get what you pay for. The reality is that if we execute, what we try to tell our developer partners is we are market rate in regards to our fee basis. If we work on multiple projects with you, then we obviously can find a way to be able to reduce the soft costs. But there are known numbers within any pro forma, and I'm the developer as a past developer, and that's what I did was basically run those, is that I'm very clear to developers, I already know what you're running in your pro forma, if you are actually being truthful with yourself. So the question would be is that, and you also know that your GC, profit base is going to be between 3 and 3.5 to 4%. Your GC is going to be X, Y, and Z. Let's just be honest. Are you interested in, soft cost reductions don't make projects survive. It's the ability of being able to get a great team together to make the hard cost side work.
Ken, I think you've got a slightly different mode with these franchised factories throughout the U.S. How do you see that engagement with a buyer?
Well, I guess we do things a little differently. So the factories aren't franchised.
Yeah.
So they supply our franchisees.
There you go.
And so, we have developer franchisees that really don't use our name. They just want access to our factory base and our knowledge. And then we have franchisees that are scattered lot builders that are doing the custom because East Coast, that's what a lot are, east of the U.S., that's what they do. So, that's where we kind of play at. So I don't know that it's exactly.
How do you get a developer to join that franchise network then? What does that pitch look like to come into that volume?
Well, so that's what usually happens is they're trying to find a way to get, again, that fragmented supply on the East Coast. How do they get to it? And so they usually they're usually it's a curious developer, I guess you would say. They're modular curious. They've tried to get into the market. They've been dedicated to get into the market, and they keep on getting rejected. I hate to say, because they go to a factory, the factory doesn't call them back. The factory doesn't meet their needs, or they can't do it, and then they kind of hear about us, and then they hear what we can do, and then that's how they kind of want to come into the fold, because again, they're getting access to a factory network. They're getting access to knowledge and information and know-how that they otherwise, because that's the other frustrating thing about why we really started the franchise itself is there's no Modular 101 class being taught in the United States. And so there's no education, and as an industry, we're not training new to modular builders. We're just not. And how are we going to grow as an industry if we don't have the training? And everything right now is OJT, and we all know that's expensive. So that's what we try to help eliminate.
Because how do you think about your capacity in filling that volume?
Yeah, so I think we're working towards a more productized bet. Right? So and I think this is where our focus on missing middle helps us get to harder to do, I'd say, on the multifamily side, because every project is drastically different, even though they look the same at the end. I think on missing middle, we're finding we can create typologies that our software can then customize to sort of deliver a triple decker on a different lot. So the whole goal for us has been, how do you build offtake commitments around these? So we're signing agreements with developers where we're saying, hey, you're going to commit to 100 cabins a year or 20 townhomes a year. How do we start assembling demand on a productized basis? The advantage the developer gets is most of the soft costs are actually amortized out, right? So you're not seeing the soft costs hit as much. And on the hard cost side, again, getting those offtake commitments allow us to lower our financing costs and how we get the working capital runs, get the factory moving. So that's the mode we're switching to. I think an inherent challenge we have more on the contracting side, and something we haven't figured out yet. We started with a new contract method where we're sort of saying, we'll deliver this triple decker as a product at this price, on this schedule, and this outcome. But the customer wanted an AIA contract, and then we had to go back and rewrite a design build contract because their lender would only underwrite to an AIA model. Yeah. So very quickly we found that even if the developer is really willing, depending on their capital stack, we're usually subject to the lender's requirements. And this is a place where we haven't been able to find a better solution yet. So we're sort of working within the guardrails of make things fit within an AIA contract that they can understand and underwrite. But we think there's more room here to get to a slightly different contracting method than what's currently stipulated.
Did you have something to add there?
I think contracting methodology is going to be the key of what we're going to be doing over the next 5 years. Because, yeah, I mean, the new AI, I mean, I'll speak for, at least for ourselves, I won't speak for all architects, but the new AIA modular contract is a joke. It doesn't cover enough. It creates too many guardrails versus not enough. And I think it overlooks the basis of any type of collaborative interface. You know, like I said, we're much more interested in a progressive design build. And in our minds, we'll throw away the AIA standardized modular contract because it just doesn't make any sense. But how we basically codify the nature of all of these creative interfaces, and you know, because this is what, you know, how do we integrate that? I think this is what we're talking today. Is a great deal of what we have to integrate is the idea is that we can't act alone anymore. We cannot have a contract for the structural engineer, the contractor, and the architect all being in separate piles. All of them have a certain interface with the factory. They have a certain responsibility in terms of connecting on-site and off-site work together. And we have found that, and I think we were talking about it earlier, that having the owner, the manufacturer, the architect, the GC, and even some of the sub-base starting from day one is almost critical to being able to be successful. I mean, one of the biggest things we had is we actually had 3 days of scope definition on one of our projects where we actually spent 3 days just talking about who's going to be responsible for what. And it was interesting because we ended up realizing that we could make this project work extraordinarily fast, but then we suddenly realized that we set the building, it was 385 units, 545 modules. We can set that all in 6 weeks, but then we have literally 10 months of scaffolding for the facade. That is, you know, that is where our industry is at, you know, is that, and I think, you know, our thing would be is, I think the modular side has their proverbial, excuse my language, shit together in some ways. It's really about the interface of the on-site and how we integrate it, and how do we innovate for those things, and how do we get contracts to basically allow that, because they're disparate elements.
I mean, I think there's also an incentive alignment challenge, right? So part of the fragmentation we see, and we see this when we're trying to price out slightly larger projects. We are not qualified to be the GC for that project, so now we have a different GC in play. Very quickly, then they try to bring in their subcontractor network in, and there's not enough work left for all of them to do on site. But their price to show up is still the same. So the actual deal ends up getting priced to be at or higher than what it otherwise costs. And so I think this is a place where we find that, I think to your point on even the facade system, like we've explored pathways on, can we get to 80 to 85% facade completion in the factory? Mm-hmm. The challenge then was the facade subcontractor on the job site is not interested anymore because there's not enough work left for them to actually show up to do that. So it's an interesting dichotomy for how you manage.
Yeah, we're looking at utilizing TI-oriented sub-base. For the reason being is that they're used to piecework. Because if you take a normalized large-scale commercial subcontractor, their whole paradigm is based on a 2.5 to 3 year basis of being on the site. You know, I've got my sheds, my Connex boxes, I've got my coffee pot, and everything else has been advertised. I know the fact that I know what my staffing is, I know what my profit is, I know what my bonuses are for this. Whereas if we're in a paradigm, and especially what we found is that the module has 85% of all the plumbing, mechanical, electrical already integrated. The module supplier is also supplying the cast iron or CPVC piping, and all you have to do is put the 2 ring clips on each floor. Yet, when you advertise their cost bases and their pro forma and the cost bases of their sub bid, they're equating out to like 15 hours of time to basically put those 2 clips on that one connection. And the reason being is that they also realize the fact that, well, the problem we have is that there's not 6 more modular projects after that one project. And that's why, at least on large scale so I would call infill-oriented projects, we're having so much trouble with the sub-base is that we don't have enough projects beyond that so that they can train their sub-base to actually give an accurate pricing where they feel like they're getting both value and profit at the same time.
Ken, anything to add?
They covered it.
There you go. No, I'm going to open it up to the floor. We've got a half an hour left, and I want to make sure that this is useful for all of you. You've got a great deal of knowledge and talent on stage. What is going through your head as you all in the audience think about how to increase your own utilization, or how to maybe convince those buyers and developers what they need to do to get on board with industrialized construction?
I was actually fortunate to be invited by, Nibby actually brought us into as being panelists and also speakers at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. They're actually one of the very first universities where they're integrating industrialized construction as a curriculum. I think it's insanely, it's where we start, honestly. Walter, I think the other thing would be is that the architectural schools aren't doing it. I mean, I helped teach a student at the University of Oregon, and it was really interesting because a third dug it. They just thought it was the most amazing thing they've ever seen. There was a third who basically never showed back up again, and there was a third that was agnostic going, well, I really want to do architecture. Because suddenly they have never been in their 5 years of architecture school brought to a position where they had constraints, because 90% of architecture school is about what you can do versus being told what you can't do. And the interesting thing about industrialized construction is that your constraints are your friends, and they're also where innovation happens. So I would say, at least on the educational side, we need to start having curriculums of both the architecture schools and also the construction. I do think that, and there is also a 101, I mean, myself and another owner representative, a good friend of mine who's an owner rep, have been trying for the last 5 years to do a speaking engagement at ULI. We have yet to be able to get a speaking engagement to talk about industrialized construction and modular delivery at ULI, which is the large, at the fall meeting, you've got the largest degree of developers anywhere in the nation showing up at one time. So I think, it's doing things like this. I think we're talking this a little bit earlier. The other thing would be is that at events like this is that rather than having us talking to you, I think, one thing we did see at like advancing prefabrication in Arizona was that we had roundtables where peer-to-peer were given a talking point, and we talked together in regards to how do we solve this? Because I think to your question is, we need to start from the bottom, Walter. I mean, I think that's where we have to be. Trying to get, 5-year sub-base, in all honesty, they're too busy, they're not interested, and you have to have companies that are either all the way in the hot tub or all the way out, because having one toe in it just will not work.
And I'm just going to say, I feel like I spend my life trying to educate the industry. I mean, a lot of you probably know me from, LinkedIn and places like that, but I publish Offsite Builder Magazine. Charlie Wardell's our managing editor. My direction to him was, I want this to be a rubber meets the road magazine. I don't want it to be theory. I want it to be, how do you actually do this? So, builders, developers can look at it and actually apply it. Last year I spent time, so if you've ever been, not trying to do advertisements here, but modularhomesourcepro.com. A lot of people just like it because Gary Fleischer's Mod Coach blog's out there. They read him on that. But I wrote a bunch of ebooks that was really out there just to be the roadmap to modular for everyone, because to your point, we come to sessions like this, it's an echo chamber. Oh yeah, we're all raw modular or offsite, but we're not bringing the people who are building it, the other architects, the lenders, the developers, the builders, the building code officials. So I've tried to write ebooks in their language to try to make them understand, put that out on Modular Home Source Pro, and now Lord knows I had to run back yesterday from the one thing. I had a realtor webinar I was doing at 12 o'clock. I was at 12:01, I made it, but I'm doing webinars weekly to most of these different groups, trying to get them to understand modular and be able to ask questions, in a non-threatening, manner they can just ask. So, I mean, I just think and Michael and I have got invited to speak at the Build to Rent conference. So that's actually, I think, a big inroad right there. So, the ULI, I think will get there, but they are discovering modular, and now they're modular curious, and they want to bring people in and start getting us talking to them. And so that's what we're there to do. And, I think, we actually have real day jobs. We're not professional speakers, but we go out and do this trying to promote our industry.
Yeah, and thank you for everything you're doing for the industry there.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah. I think to your question, like I've noticed a clear shift over the last year in the markets we're in, where a lot of the demand's actually true inbound, where like the pain point's real. It's like developers have sort of been on the sidelines since 2022. After the September rate drops, they're all starting to get projects repriced, and they are shocked by the numbers they're getting back. So we get a couple of calls every day on our Zoom phone number where it's like, hey, I've got a 60-unit project that is not penciling. Can you guys take a look? And to me, I think like it's clear the industry is sort of getting through this true structural change, that folks aren't just trying to say, let's go try a different way to do things. Like the problem is real. Yeah. We need a better solution. And our job has been more to say, like, the outcome can still look better than what you're used to, right? So I think a lot of the places we've been deliberate on, right, like not just on the education piece, but just what we're building, is being deliberate on the choice of finishes, the way we think about our units coming together, the place where we can still provide enough floor plan flexibility that when customers or prospective stakeholders walk into our factory, see our show units, the usual response is, I can't believe this is built in a factory. And we've been trying to get to that type of a response that actually breaks all preconceived notions, right? And if you sort of look at the units your company builds, haven't seen the units you guys are building yet, but in general, it's a much higher quality process. And I think I'd say previously, if I sort of just react back to how we were trying to find customers in 23, 24, a lot of it was trying to advertise on the benefits of modular. And I think what has shifted since has been more of, like, what does your capacity look like, right? Like, can you guys get to this performance? And I think the industry need has become critical enough that there's a lot more self-education taking place, and there's already good content out there. Yeah. But this has been true for our market. I'm pretty sure there is more work to be done. But.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to add, and I think it's professor-driven too in a lot of cases, because I have individual professors call. In Cal Poly, I was a guest lecturer for a Master's of Construction class. I've done that at a number of different universities. We've actually done factory tours for people who are getting like their Master's in Real Estate Development, but it's usually driven by the professor one-off, again, modular curious kind of thing. How do we get them, into it, and then how do we build that past that to where you say they're introducing courses. I know Virginia Tech is in a big way is involved in off-site construction, and several of the professors. I know one's here. Bobby Vance is here today. So, but they're taking a very active role in off-site modular.
Yeah. I think the other thing that we don't do is the setting days are some of the most amazing, awe-inspiring days that happen on a construction site. It's like bring your dad to school type of day. And I think that we don't take advantage of it. And like, for example, we have a major setting in November where we're going to invite every single developer we know, every single sub we know, every single engineer, because it's the only way to show and scale that this can be done. And I think that we actually don't take advantage of that. We actually sometimes don't even want to show our setting because we're afraid the fact that, the first couple of days of setting are, always kind of we're finding our way out of the wilderness. But, the reality is that we should be smart about it, that once we get to that place, that we don't be afraid of bringing as many people as we possibly can, because it truly demonstrates the fact that you have a fully finished object being set in 15 to 25 minutes. And it's like, it's a mic drop. And I think that we need to be more aggressive about utilizing those times for our industry than, because doing it in the educational situation, it's somewhat benign, it's somewhat sterile, but to actually see an 80,000 pound module being moved by a 200-ton crane, basically being dropped in place and be moved on to the next one, it basically is a answer to a question without even have to ask.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we usually bring ice cream trucks for set days.
Yeah.
And that really helps you. So.
I seem to have bought more of my attorneys or the attorneys new cars I have in the last few months than anything else. I mean, the issue is that we need to be, what's really the most I would say eye-opening thing for myself, and I've been practicing for 30 some years, was the complexity of how the contracts were structured, not just in the owner-architect or the owner-GC contract, but the fact that a lot of the manufacturer's contracts that are never signed by the architect or by the GC, especially if the owners are buying directly through the manufacturer, have all kinds of provisions that are in essence completely contrary to the nature of the owner-architect and the owner-GC contract. So I think the next generation of contract is a contract that is not an AIA and is not a consensus, but it is something where all parties are drawn in under one contract. Because their basis of standard of care and ownership of shops are different than my ownership of my drawings. Their IP in some ways is protected, but yet we're using their IP on a constant basis, and it's outflowing to all kinds of people that they may or may not be happy with. The sharing of data, the sharing of models, of families, and everything else is something that we need to answer in the next few years, because it really is the reason why we all hate owner reps is because right now they are all what I would call scorekeepers. You know, they are basically, you said that, and you said that, and you are going to do this, and you're going to do that, where they're not really managing the process. They're just scorekeeping basically what is being said and who's responsible for what. Our mind is that shouldn't be that guy. That person, that owner rep should be basically a connector and a facilitator and somebody who drives the project versus scorekeeping on a contractual basis, because the contracts are all over the place. So I think right now, that to me is the next generation is, what is that contract? And my sense though is, I don't know if AIA is really going to drive it. I don't know if consensus, I know if CGI is going to be, somebody's going to have a contract that we can all live with, because we all need to be able to talk and move and collaborate with each other.
Yeah, I mean, we'd love it to be as simple as you buy a washing machine. Right? Like,
Yeah.
how do you get it to be a
product.
piece of equipment or a product? And I think the Center of Offsite Construction, they probably have the best framework around this right now. They're trying to bring in the uniform commercial, the UCC, I forget the acronym.
Commercial code.
So I think that there's a good framework that we're excited about, but not in practice yet.
The other piece that I'll add here on the set days and the ability to invite people in, the underlying trust that is ultimately contracted in any way, shape, or form. I've seen more people learn from inviting a competitor to their set day and asking them for feedback than almost any other single act, because that person on the other side sees something differently and operates in a different system than you do. But if you can have that open door and that open trust to say, hey, come look at my thing and give me feedback on how we're doing this, this is going to be a great, it's a great situation, and you both end up better for it, even though it's not a purely contractual obligation.
Exactly,
in that regard. Yeah. I think we have time for one more question. I did see a few other hands go up in the last one. Okay. If we come back to this, I've got two parts in this. Number one, what are you taking away from these 2 days in this conference that you're going to do something differently on Monday? And what do you want other people to do differently on Monday? You can answer one or both, but I'm really fascinated in. We had a lot of conversation over 2 days about the theory and the connection and how we want to feel differently about this. What do you hope we actually do differently when we get home?
I guess actually I'll go to the education side. I mean, I think a lot of people here, we know a lot, you've learned a lot, but we've got to go back and spread the gospel of offsite. Is how do we go out and just share this with people, at least get them curious to start looking at it and get exposed to it. I mean, I'm still surprised at how many places I go and people don't even know what offsite construction is. I mean, don't even know. I'm shocked. I mean, and obviously we live this every day, but I'm shocked that they don't even have a concept of you can build a box and ship it down the road and set it with a crane. That's possible. I mean, they don't have it. So, I mean, we've just got to we think we're getting the word out. We're not. We just got to get it out better. Use all of our forces.
It's a good answer.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think the path to change here is to keep building more homes. And I think the biggest takeaway for me, seeing the amount of interest, at least on Milcon, and the amount of pipeline that's possible there, I think that starts becoming a catalyst, in my opinion, for how it brings existing factories together, but significantly more factories into the mix. And so I'm definitely intrigued on what does that path look like, and that's always been a question I've posed back to my team. And the second piece, I think it's also very easy to keep falling into the trappings of, with industrialized construction, we have an opportunity to really get to a productized workflow, but it's very easy once you start layering in all the other aspects around it. It's easy to fall into, let's just treat this as a project and then restart the whole cycle again. We've fallen into this trapping before, and I think when I was talking to Andy, you should hire him as a structural engineer. He's really good at reminding us on, keep going back to Andy and Sarah, actually, on keep going back to the product basis, and I think there's a key part of leverage there for all of us to exercise.
Yeah. So I can answer your question. I think it's for me, we're all true believers, but I think that the breadth of where the industry has expanded over the last 5 years is insanely heartening. I mean, you have manufacturers, small manufacturers from Tennessee, to Ghost Factory, who's basically working all over the world, doing incredible different types of methodologies, delivery methodologies, systems, use of technology and everything else. Is that, to me, it's like the wave has gotten finally big, and we should all ride it. So that, for me, we're all disciples and apostles. We love to preach. We believe this. We're all in. As Vaughn said, we should be raising our hands versus kind of trying to stick my hand up at the table. Where everyone else, I think, is connectivity. I think that the fact is that this is an ecosystem that is willing to share. They're willing to talk. They're willing to give, real world examples of how we've experienced it. And I think that for everyone at this thing is, don't be afraid of reaching out and understanding that everyone is invested to make this happen. We're invested with the idea that this is the only methodology to go in our minds, and that we shouldn't be afraid to be able to ask each other what you're learning. What can I learn from you? What am I not doing right? Or what success looks like for you versus myself?
Yeah. I think the one thing that I would encourage everybody, from me, the one thing that I would encourage everybody to look into, and because you hit this a little bit, I come from a world of product management in my prior role. I was a civil engineer by training, got into product management, and now I'm coming back to civil engineering. And the framing around owning a product, whether it's a physical product or a software product, is an incredibly useful wedge into the way that we need to talk, the way that I think we need to talk about industrialized construction in service to the customers. And so to any of you that are looking for another industry or another way to think about what industrialized construction needs or could use, I would really recommend go read a book on product management or go have a conversation with someone that works in that space, because the way the language and the engagement and how we relate to each other across functions and companies and just how we talk about value is, I think, underlying a lot. And it's also going to, I mean, we hit a little bit of the East Coast, West Coast vibe up here, but the product management is definitely a West Coast vibe, venture capital software as a service view. Moving that into the good old fashioned, like, it is a great business to be in where you can own a product from life to death and service that thing and show up and be on time for your customers. So that would be my big takeaway. Do you have a book recommendation? So I will look it up right now, but I went to school at Cornell with a good friend, Melissa Perry, and I cannot remember the exact title of it, but it was kind of a product management for dummies type approach. But I'll look it up on my phone and approach me afterwards if you want to. But any other questions as we close, or any other comments from the audience to round this out? I just want to say thank you to you guys for showing up, for being panelists. It's been fantastic.